do I regret giving the Specialized Stumpjumper 15 Trail Bike of the Year? What's going on, you guys? Mo Awesome from Awesome MTB. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another bike review. Today we're going to be reviewing the Specialized Stumpjumper Alloy 15. If you guys have been following the channel and you saw our trail bike buyer's guide, you actually know that I actually gave the carbon version of the Stumpjumper 15 Trail Bike of the Year, and I wanted to try out the alloy version for a few reasons. First is going to be cost is definitely a little bit more of an affordable option, and on top of that, Specialized actually remembered to put the cable ports on this thing, so you can run cable drivetrains on here. Now, if you're not familiar with the Stumpjumper 15, it's supposed to be a do-all trail bike with 150 millimeters of travel up front and 145 millimeters of travel in the rear and about a 64.5-degree head angle. Now, this right here is the comp build. So up front, we have a Fox 36 rhythm fork. In the rear, we actually have their Genie rear shock. For the drivetrain, we have the Shimano SLX drivetrain. Once again, that is a cable drivetrain. We have an X-Fusion Manic dropper post. We have Specialized cockpit up here. For wheels, we have the Specialized alloy wheels. And for tires, we have a Butcher up front in the T9, and we have an Eliminator in the rear in the T7. Now, we also get internal frame storage on here. Now, in terms of how much this bike weighs, like I said, it is a little on the heavier side. We're about 16.2 kilograms, and in pounds, about 35.6, and that's with pedals. Now, normally this Stumpjumper alloy in the comp build is about 4,500 MSRP. However, this thing was on mega sale at the sponsor of today's video, and that is Cycle Limited. Cycle Limited is your go-to online retailer for both brand new and certified pre-owned bikes and gear, all at unbeatable prices. They work directly with the manufacturer to offer the best deals on top-tier road, MTB, gravel, and e-bikes, plus parts and accessories. Once again, their site is filled with amazing deals on both brand new and certified pre-owned bikes, and every pre-owned bike is professionally inspected, tuned, and ready to ride. They also are able to get direct manufacturer pricing, so there is no middle person, just great deals like the Shimano XT 4-piston brakes, which are a steal right now. Once again, I found the Stumpjumper 15 alloy on their site brand new at an insane deal, and it was shipped within the same day. It came very well packaged, and I had it built up in no time. It was awesome seeing how much care they put into packaging their bikes and how easy it was to assemble. And in addition to fast and secure shipping, they also offer hassle-free returns, and international shipping is coming soon. They also have a rad bike quiz finder on their website as well, and it's an awesome way to narrow down their huge selection of available bikes to figure out what works for you and your price point. Cycle Limited also owns every bike they sell, ensuring top-tier quality and worry-free buying experience. Once again, you guys, I can't recommend Cycle Limited enough in today's market. It's so important to make sure you're getting the best deal out there. There's so many deals to be had, and Cycle Limited helps make things easy. Huge thank you to Cycle Limited for sponsoring this video. We'll leave a link to them in the description of this video. That also helps support the channel. Now, before I talk about what I think about the Stumpjumper Alloy 15 and why I kind of regret giving the carbon version trail bike of the year, let's actually go for a ride out here in Sedona and show you guys how this thing rides. All right, we have made it to Highline, climbing our way up today on the Stumpjumper 15, this time the alloy version. I have a cable drivetrain on here, which wasn't possible on the carbon because it's wireless only on that one. Very stoked to share with you guys my thoughts on this bike, because honestly, the more I ride it, the more I'm like, man, there's so much bang for buck in this version. Was that carbon version really trail bike of the year? What I'm really excited for you guys to see is how good of a technical climber this bike is. I've said it before, Specialized definitely has a little bit more of an active suspension approach on the Stumpjumper, and combine that with the Genie, so much traction on climbs. Now, this section's always a good test of traction with bikes. definitely up, down, all around, and a lot of tight twistiness into it. No issues for the Stumpy. Like I said, traction's pretty insane on this thing. Now I do think one weak spot might be the tires. I've never really gotten along with Specialized tires. I'm still finding myself to prefer Maxxis over these. The profile, tad on the, I would say, stiffer side, especially in the rear with the T7. And then even up front, they spec a 2.3, which not really sure why they would on the Stumpy. Much more tech over here. You really want to kind of make sure you're timing everything correctly, especially pedal strokes. Pretty easy to kind of clip something, fall off a cliff. With the Stumpy 15, the positioning on the Geo is amazing. I love the seat angle on this thing. And I also like the bottom bracket and the high. I would actually say the bottom bracket and the high is a little on the low side, which you appreciate on the descents, but it's not too low to where you feel like you're clipping on these textile climbs. Now, I will say I think low is too low. Just in general, all around. I think unless you're in a bike park, that low setting, not really necessary. So, just pointing that out. Just like that. We are at the top. Look at those views. Man, alloy bike, amazing views. What else can you ask for? Oh, cable shifting. That's what some people would say. And the Stumpy always feels so planted. I think the Genie is as close to a coil as you're gonna get on an air shock, which is insane given how small and light it is. Nice. Woo. Plenty of wind up here today. But you know, that's where sometimes the weight of an alloy bike might actually help out, especially when there's sketchy slabs around. No issues for that Stumpy. Things are gonna get a little bit on the steeper side here. Let's see what we got. No issues for the Stumpy. One more slab down here. A little windy too, but we are making it. Once again, we're not gonna win any sprinting races on this bike, but I will say traction for absolute days when it comes time for the climb. I'm talking, we got a steep section right here into this chunk. No issues for the Stumpy. Okay, right down here. Man, this bike, so confident in styring. And I also think some of that weight is also helping with that. I feel like this thing is just kind of super planted to the bike. I've always been impressed by what they've been able to do with this platform. All right, right through here, modulating the brakes. Man, I really do like these brakes. Okay, take the high line. And I do also, like I said, like the S4 for this maneuverability stuff. It feels like just a little bit more playful, and I like that I'm experimenting with it. This is where the real fun stuff is. This little chunky part right here. Let me see if I can remember where to go. I think I go down here. Nice. Oh my God, guys. Bicycles are awesome. And this one is too. Whew. So much junk. No issues for the Stumpy. I love this little section right here. These brakes are blowing me away. I gotta look at what the price point is on these things because there's so much modulation and control, but at the same time too, a ton of stopping power, which is rad. I think we want to go high line here, control it to here. I do feel like I have to be careful in corners with these tires. I feel like the side profile is not necessarily my favorite with Specialized tires, and these are 2.3s, but overall loving this bike. All right, you guys, hopefully you enjoyed that ride out here on Highline. That has to be one of my favorite trails. And once again, you guys, the Stumpjumper 15 is a bike that I really do like. So starting off with climbing, now I think its strong suit when it comes time for climbing is gonna be tech climbs. You were really able to feel how that Genie as well as that suspension line they went with on the Stumpjumper has a much more active approach out on the trails, both in and out of the saddles. And so for tech moves and tech climbs, this thing definitely felt planted to the ground. I also love that seat angle on here. I felt like I was right on top of that bottom bracket. Even on the S4, I actually really did enjoy the reach. I actually think the Stumpjumper is a little bit on the bigger side. And so yeah, the S4 definitely still worked for me on the climbs. And once again, that seat angle definitely feel dialed there. Now I will say I also like that head angle, even though on paper 64.5 is a little on the slacker side for this kind of style of bike. I will say it was very responsive on climbs and I was able to make tight sections with ease. Now in terms of some negatives when it came time for climbing, it definitely has much more active suspension design. So it did feel like there was a slight loss of efficiency when you kind of got out of the saddle and put that power down. Now that Genie shock is also a little on the softer side. So when you have that and you combine that with an active suspension design, you definitely feel yourself reaching for that lockout a little bit more so, especially like I said, this build build is a little on the heavier side. So I do feel like you will find yourself reaching for that lockout a little bit more often. Now, moving on to the downhills, this thing is a blast downhill. Stability is the first word that comes to mind. It definitely feels like it's one of those bikes that gives you the confidence to tackle challenging terrain, especially out here on Highline. There's so many chunky bits, and never once did I feel undergunned with the Stumpjumper 15. It just feels like a tank downhill, and I was very impressed by that stability, especially through the chunk. Also love that Genie rear shock on here. It really does feel somewhat coil-like over chunk, but it still has a good pop when you need to kind of hop off of stuff or hop in and out of corners. And yeah, I was very impressed by how supple that Genie shock, and I definitely think it's probably one of the most coil-like air shocks on the market. In terms of the Geo, I also like how stable that front end feels. I feel like that head angle, once again, is perfect, 64.5, not too slack, not too steep. I feel like the bottom bracket in the high mode is actually perfect, and I actually would say it might even feel a little bit on the lower side. And yeah, you definitely feel a lot of high speed stability coming from this bike, and when you combine that with that active suspension approach and that Genie rear shock, you're gonna get traction for days and a ton of confidence out on the trails. In terms of the actual build, like I said, I really like that rear shock. I actually do like that Fox Rhythm fork up front. In terms of the wheels, I definitely think you can go with something a little bit lighter on here. It will drastically improve how this bike climbs. I actually really did like those TRP brakes on here. I feel like they're really good bang for buck, and I felt like there was a ton of stopping power. Definitely felt super nice out on the trails. I didn't really like that X-Fusion dropper post on there. I felt like it was on the slower side. It just feels a little bit kind of cheap in terms of actuation. In terms of the tires, that's also something I definitely didn't get along with. I don't really get along with Specialized tires. I feel like the Butcher is okay up front. I think I would want to go with something wider and then maybe even just a tad stickier. I just haven't really gone along with Specialized tires. Do I regret giving the Specialized Stumpjumper 15 Trail Bike of the Year? And I actually kind of think that I do. Now, don't get me wrong, I still really like the bike on paper and as well as out on the trails. My time on the Stumpjumper 15 Carbon out on the trails was pretty awesome. I felt like it really was a good do-everything trail bike. However, riding the alloy version, just seeing the bang for buck in this thing, especially right now with those crazy prices that you can find online, I feel like there's so much bang for buck in the alloy version, and more importantly, and which is kind of leading to a little bit of that regret, is the ability to run a cable drivetrain on here. I feel like there was no real excuse for Specialized to not have put those cable ports on the Carbon version. I just feel like the more I ride this bike, the more I see how much bang for buck is in this thing. I don't really understand why you can't run a cable drivetrain on the Carbon version. Another note here, and I made it about the Stumpjumper 15, I actually think the stock builds, there's gonna be a lot of stuff I'll probably be upgrading right away. Like I said, I don't really get along with the tires. Wheels also can shed some weight. In that Carbon version, you also had Mavens on there with no pad contact adjustment. I just feel like with the stock builds of the Stumpjumpers, there's just been a lot of things I would probably upgrade right away. Seeing the Stumpjumper 15 alloy at such an amazing price point, currently seeing some of those deals, I actually think you could pick one of these up and do so many upgrades to them that you would actually want to ride out on the trails and just get an insanely good bang for buck build. In terms of how the alloy version stacks up to the Carbon version out on the trails, I felt very similar in terms of suspension characteristics. Like I said, that Genie rear shock is amazing. I really think Specialized did a great job with that. And the bike feels very planted, both alloy and Carbon. I feel like with the alloy version, once again, you're gonna get a little bit more stability and a little bit more of a tank-like feel out on the trails. And that's just gonna be due to it being a little bit heavier than the Carbon version. However, like I said, if you were to put a lighter set of wheels on the alloy version, I feel like you're gonna get the best of both worlds. You're gonna get that stability and that ruggedness that you want from an alloy bike, but at the same time too, you're gonna get that nimbleness and that playfulness from a lighter set of wheels. And I feel like you're gonna be super stoked out on the trails. So to summarize things up, I feel like the Stumpjumper 15 alloy has an amazing geo. I feel like it has an amazing suspension profile, especially if you prioritize traction. I love the Genie rear shock on there. I really like that the alloy version that you can run cables. And overall, I'm very impressed with that Stumpjumper 15 alloy, especially at those deals you can find this bike right now. And I can't thank Cycle Limited enough for making this video possible. Once again, you guys, the deals on their website right now are absolutely insane. So yeah, check them out. We'll leave a link to them in the description of this video. If you guys have any questions about the Stumpjumper 15 alloy, let me know in the comment section. And until next time, you guys, ride awesome. You.